Hi and good morning. Today is a good day. I'm waking up from a really good night's sleep and still feel a bit tired, a bit heavy, and and I'm still grateful to be holding this time and holding this space. So um, I hope all of you had a good night's sleep and had a day where you had moments and times where you felt that you could reconnect with your meditation practice and allowed that to help you navigate and inform how you moved through the day and the choices that you made. Today I'd like to explore this notion of non-judgment. And so let's start off today. Before I read that parable, let's start off with just a quick mood check. So take a moment to feel into your mood right now. And as I feel into my mood, mostly I feel tired. I feel a bit heavy, a bit tired. So notice what that is for you. And again, we're meeting that without judgment, without attachment, and without resistance, and allowing that self-awareness to inform us. So take a moment and notice what your experience is today. After connecting with that felt experience, with that mood, bring that into your field of awareness as I share the parable this morning. So this is the parable of non-judgment, and again, this is an excerpt from the Eckhart Tolle book, New Earth. And it goes on to say, the deeper interconnectedness of all things and events implies that mental labels of good or bad are ultimately illusory. They always imply a limited perspective, and so are true only relatively and temporarily. This is illustrated in the story of the wise man who won an expensive car in the lottery. His family and friends were so happy they came to him to celebrate. "Isn't that great?" they said. "You are so lucky." The man smiled and said, "Maybe." For a few weeks he enjoyed the car. Then one day a drunken driver crashed into his new car at an intersection and ended up in the hospital with multiple injuries. His family and friends came to see him and said, "That was so unfortunate." Again the man smiled and said, "Maybe." While he was still in the hospital, one night there was a landslide, and his house fell into the sea. Again his friends came the next day and said, "Weren't you so lucky to have been in the hospital?" Again he said, "Maybe." The wise man's maybe signifies the refusal to judge anything that happens. Instead of judging what is, he accepts it, and so enters into conscious alignment with the higher order. He knows that often it is impossible for the mind to understand what place or purpose a seemingly random event has in the tapestry of the whole. But there are no random events. No events or things that exist by and for themselves in isolation. And so that's what I'd like to just share some reflections on today is this awareness of non-judgment and the practice of it. As events come into our lives, we can first meet them with a awareness of non-judgment, non-attachment, and non-resistance. And it's not that we don't eventually form an assessment and take an action, but it's that we first feel that arousal, that startle from that event, and instead of, like as we started in this whole morning series, before just going from the stimulus and going immediately to the response, which might be a judgment, an attachment, or some kind of resistance, we create the space first. We create the space where the self-awareness lies. We create the space where imagination and creativity lies, and our conscience lies. We tie into our values and our ethics, and then we move into a response. And even when we move into a response, the possibility is that we still stay open to new information rather than being held in a rigid belief. We can be adaptable and changeable and open and continually learning. So that has been a powerful practice for me. Is the practice when something startles me, disrupts my status quo, and have, through practices and training, to have learned to pause, to feel those emotions, to feel those sensations, to become aware of the automatic thought that comes into my head, the automatic judgment, whether or not I'm getting overly stuck or attached to that situation or that thought or that image, or whether or not I'm just internally, I can feel that I'm really resisting what is. To be able to pause, to acknowledge that, to call it out sometimes, and allow that to kind of go through its rhythm and keep opening that space between the stimulus and the response, and then allowing imagination to come in, allowing new possibilities to come in, creativity to come in. And so many, when I reflect back, so many blessings that I now enjoy had their origin in previous conflicts where I felt that startle and I wanted to immediately go to a judgment, and instead I would go take some time in that judgmental state, and I would go sit on my meditation cushion or my meditation chair and sit for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, or sometimes there were things in the path that I've been on. Once I sat for an hour with something that I really was stuck on and really in a strong judgment around. And what was amazing is that in that particular instance, this was a few years ago, I felt the charge, the negative emotion, the judgment, and I knew that just going in, I could literally, viscerally, and consciously feel the old emotion come back, the old judgment come back, the old behavior coming back. And at that point, when I felt those familiar feelings, I knew it was time to transform that old way of being was no longer useful. It was going to lead to the same old result. And so I went down into my office and I grabbed this purple meditation chair, which is right off to my left, and I sat right there, and I sat with it for about an hour. And what was amazing was as I sat there and let that go and just became aware and let that move through me, is towards the end of that that meditation, all of a sudden it's like, how can I describe this? It was like everything lifted and opened. All of a sudden I was crystal clear on my mood shifted, my thinking shifted. It was crystal clear about the new positive action that I was going to take around this old, familiar, perennial challenge I was having in my life, or had in my life, my whole life. And so that was powerful, and so that's a testimony to the power of meditation and what this practice can do, and how transformative it can be. So take a moment to just think, what are practices in your life that there may be a judgment, a recurrent judgment, a current judgment, or an old recurrent judgment that keeps cropping up in your life, and how might you cultivate the ability to feel that charge that happens whenever you're triggered by a thought or an experience or a situation that brings back those old judgments, and how might you be in different practices like meditation to work with that, transform that if it's a response that's no longer useful to you. It may have helped you, it may have gotten you, that judgment or that way of responding may have gotten you to this point, but it may not be helpful in getting you to where you're headed. Who you're becoming is another way to say that. So the parable of non-judgment, and so as in the future meditations, as I share that, as we're doing the self-awareness practices, when I share, meet that awareness, or meet that mood without judgment, without attachment or resistance. Now you have 3 stories, 3 parables that you have the potential to tie into, and to help bring some more meaning to those invitations. So I hope the 3 parables were helpful, and they serve you. They certainly have served me in my life, and they often return to me at moments where I really need them. So let's begin here with just tying into our mood with a self-awareness practice. So let's feel into our mood. So notice what your mood is right now. As I'm feeling in here, already my mood has shifted. Some of that heaviness that I started the session with, and the fatigue that I was feeling, that's already started to lighten a bit, and there's a bit of a flow that I'm noticing that's happening inside of me. Notice if there's been a shift in you. And let's move into our self-awareness practices together today. So let's start with relaxing our eyes. So relaxing this ocular band. So soften your eyes as you bring attention to your eyes. Try to look at the room, but let go of the detail. Kind of just open your visions and have a soft view. Relaxing your jaw. Let it just be hanging on like a hinge. Relaxing your chin. Relaxing this area right by your Adam's apple, this area of voice and self-expression. Sometimes we're under a charge and we can't fully speak, or we don't feel like we can speak, or our voice starts to crack because there's a contraction there. And then bring your attention to your shoulders and your forearms, and let's just make a firm fist and bring your shoulders up. Feel that contraction in your shoulders and dropping your shoulders down. Good. Let's do that again. Bringing shoulders up. And then notice feeling in there. Already I feel some tingling in my shoulders. They don't feel so constricted. The key is to do the practice and take a few moments to feel afterwards. And then bring attention to your chest. So softening your chest, opening your chest, relaxing your diaphragm right here on the lower border of your rib cage. So sometimes I will just bring my attention there, or sometimes I'll just feel into the lower border, and I'll see if there's even any room there. Is my diaphragm so tight there's no space, I can't even feel in underneath my rib cage, it's so tight. And so I should add that is a good awareness to have, is that as we go through these tension bands from eyes, jaw, work our way down to our feet, you'll notice as you become aware that each of us has predictable places where we tend to historically contract under pressure. And so you can start to, through practice and awareness, you can start to realize, when I get provoked, my jaw clenches up, or my shoulders raise, or my diaphragm, I stop breathing, my diaphragm locks up, or I lock up my pelvis. And with that awareness, you can start to, instead of those emotions and sensations, those contraction patterns in your body, instead of them running you at an unconscious level, you can turn them into what I like to call informants. So I know that if I'm under pressure, too much pressure, I know that my jaw is going to tighten, I know my diaphragm is going to tighten, I know my hips are going to tighten. So sometimes I'll be out in life and living and in a situation, and my thinking mind thinks, oh, no big deal, but I'm like, my jaw is just contracted and I can't let that go. It'll give me a moment of pause and really relax my jaw, and perhaps I'll be in the question of, well, maybe that does bother me. Maybe there is something I need to face into there. Maybe there is a request I need to make, or maybe there is a decline that I need to make in that situation, and that sometimes is informed by what my body's doing, because my thinking mind hasn't caught up yet. So that's a possibility as we to start to operationalize this body awareness. So let's continue on, softening the belly, relaxing your hips and thighs, fronts and back, relaxing your knees and your calves, your shins and your feet and toes. And we're just creating some space here, creating space. Let's come into our vertical line. So let's find balance here on our vertical line from top to bottom. Feeling this as a bridge, imagining this as a bridge between our physicality and our spirituality. Sometimes it's framed as we come into our vertical line in that felt sense of our body, feeling ourselves as a bridge between heaven and earth. And from there we can take a deep breath in through the crown of our head with your imagination and your attention. Pull that breath through and exhale through your feet and hands. Good. Inhaling through your feet and hands and exhaling through the crown of your head. And even there, you might start to feel a softening or a shift or more space, internal space, even in that imagery. And then bring our attention to our width. So if you're standing or seated, just start to rock side to side. Starting to balance here. I'm starting to balance on my sits bones as I'm sitting here. And starting to feel into this space between left and right as the social emotional plane. So it's where we find the balance between self and others. There's this capacity to feel ourselves while extending and connecting to others. And sometimes in the way that we've organized ourselves or shaped ourselves, we've learned to bring attention to others but not feel ourselves, and that can have a way of where we're always tending to the needs of others but forgetting ourselves. And sometimes without really consciousness, we've focused on mostly feeling ourselves and we can't feel others as well. And so that can create a lot of self-focus. And so this practice is all about creating that balance, feeling ourselves while extending out to others, so we can create balance. And then feeling into our depth here, so just feeling the space in front of you and the space behind you. Imagine the space behind you as your history, feeling this is your back body. Imagine and bring attention to all the experiences that have shaped you up to this moment. And then as you extend your attention and imagination forward, starting to feel into where you're headed. The trajectory of your day can be as a small microcosm of just what's your intention for the future of this day and the future of this week, and what are you imagining for this month, for April, for May, for June. Start to extend your attention, your imagination forward. And then slowly just start to find this balance point between what has happened, your past, and your intentions, your visions, your longings, your yearnings that are pulling you forward. And as we settle into this felt sense of aligning ourselves with gravity, we can start to feel this felt sense of effortlessness in standing or sitting here. And just allow that felt sense of effortlessness to be the felt sense of the present moment. The present moment doesn't have to be just something, an idea, a thought that you think. It can be a thought that you think while you're having a direct experience of the present moment in your body. Even with that awareness, something shifted in me, something opened right there. I could feel that. Notice what's happening for you. And then just take your right hand and bring attention and energy to your right hand so you can feel your hand, not only see it, and just bring it and place it right over your navel, and allow that as you feel your hand on your belly, just drop your attention there. And that can be a great way, feeling your hand on your belly can be a great practice to help you move from the thinking self and then dropping down into the feeling self. The way to say that is removing more from the consciousness and dropping into what is typically unconscious. Dropping into our center. And from this centered place, I invite you to close your eyes and start to further enter into that inner space of silence. And set your intention. Remind yourself for the sake of what that you're doing the practice. Be empty of worrying. Think who created the thought. Why do you stay in prison when the door is wide open? Move outside the tangle of fear, thinking. Live in silence, flowing down and down into always widening rings of being. Be empty of worrying. Think who created the thought. Why do you stay in prison when the door is wide open? Move outside the tangle of fear, thinking. Live in silence, flowing down and down into always widening rings of being. And as we close our practice, if you feel a longing to continue to sit, I encourage you to do that. And if you feel complete, take a moment to set your intention once again and remind yourself for the sake of what that you did the practice. And then on your next exhale, slowly begin to move your arms and legs. And then very slowly and very gently, begin to open your eyes. and let the outside world come back in again. Take a moment to notice what your mood is right now, and if it's changed or shifted since the very beginning of this time together. I feel much more grounded, much more connected. I feel lighter, and that's opening up new thoughts, new possibilities for me as my mood starts to shift. Notice what it is for you. So thank you all for creating this space together today. It was a joy to share and a joy to hold the space. And I look forward to our practice tomorrow at 7 a.m. One last offer, and or I guess more of an inquiry, is we're all starting to orient and face into April, and as I've been experiencing the generosity and kindness of many people during this time, as well as just different businesses and everything that people are offering to help everybody buoy through this time. And so I just would like to put out an inquiry today. What's coming up for me in my imagination is in April offering half-hour private meditation sessions on Zoom, and wanted to just put an inquiry out there to see who would be interested in that. I haven't fleshed it out yet. I wanted to see what the interest is, and I really feel like my work as a somatic coach, that's one offering I can make into the world, and I feel it keeps coming back for me, so I trust that it's something that it's something to follow. So if you would, just private message me on Facebook and let me know if that's something that you'd be interested in. And then if there's enough interest, I'll set up those meditation sessions. They would be complimentary, so we would just set up time, a half hour is the way I'm imagining it, at a certain block of time, and work in a individual meditation practice for those who engage. So blessings to you today, friends, and may this time that we spent together be an anchor for us and help move us more freely into a positive and productive day. Bye for now, and I'll see you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Bye.